Do you know, sometimes somebody shimmies into your life and they properly enhance it. And I am delighted to say that Lilianne Milgrom for me was one of those people. She is, I've already mentioned, I would say the world authority, or one of the world authorities on this extraordinary painting, The Origin of the World. It's a 19th century painting. It's by Gustave Courbet, L'Origine du Monde in French, The Origin of the World. It's provocative. It is considered to be by some quite shocking. I am going to show you this image now, and I'm also in a second going to turn off, once we have Lilianne safely with me, I will also turn off comments. But it is, I'm going to warn you, an image of female genitalia that is quite graphic. Courbet was good at his job. So there we go. I hope that you can see that. Has the request rather hilariously obscured, like a sort of privacy sticker, the origin of the world? I don't know. So anyway, this is the painting. Until 1995, Gustave Courbet's L'Origine du Monde was very rarely seen. Its successive owners were shrouded in mystery. There were stories that it was hidden behind another painting in a false frame. Such was its shock value. There are other stories that the Nazis seized it in the Second World War, and that it was later smuggled out of Hungary in a pretty dangerous and desperate rescue mission. But all of this is kind of unsubstantiated and a little bit sketchy until now, because Lilianne has written the most fantastic novel. It's called L'Origine, the world's most erotic, or the secret life of the world's most erotic masterpiece. I mean, that's a title and a half to begin with, isn't it? And it is painstakingly researched. It is a veritable roller coaster of intrigue and of secret deals, of love, of lust, and it is, well, above everything else, basically a rollicking good read. So can't recommend it highly enough. Lilianne, I'm delighted, is going to be joining me in a second when I let her in. She describes herself as a global artist at large. She was born in Paris, brought up in Australia. She has subsequently lived in places as diverse as Tel Aviv and San Francisco. Lilianne now lives in Washington, DC, and is an acclaimed artist as well as a published writer on the arts. And now, of course, she is also a novelist. L'Origine is her first book. So I am delighted to welcome Lilianne Milgrom. Now let's hope this works, that Lilianne can come and join me. And I'm going to then, once Lilianne has joined me, I am going to, yes, there she is!
Oh, it worked!
It's worked so far! I'm going to turn off comments. And I'm going to just take this image down for a moment. I think everyone's got the measure of it. There we go. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm so excited to be talking to you about this.
Thank you. I'm really, really delighted that we're doing this as well. I think, yeah, it's a fantastic novel. Congratulations, and you must be thrilled. I think you were saying earlier that it's gone terribly well since it was published, and it's out into the world. What, on Tuesday?
It's out into the world. After 10 years, it's like really terrifying and exhilarating, and it's just very validating when people say that they like it, because you just sort of don't know. You're out in the world, you love it. You never know.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. But yeah, I know. I mean, it was your baby for 10 years, and now other people got their mitts on it. But I'm delighted, and I hope that everyone does read it. So, your first encounter with L'Origine du Monde was in the Musée d'Orsay. You were on an artist's residential course, right, in Paris at the time.
Right.
And you describe in the beginning of the novel that you walk in and you see this work of art and you are bewitched by it immediately.
That's a great word, yes.
Bewitched. I know, I just thought that up. That was good, wasn't it?
I should have used that.
And within a very short period of time, you had the permission to be its official copyist, which meant that you then spent hours in front of L'Origine du Monde. Hours a day, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, hours a day.
Hours a day over 6 weeks, sitting in front of this work of art. And you've subsequently written your fantastic novel. So you have spent a lot of time thinking about this piece. It's a work that really does provoke very strong reactions, positive and negative. How did you feel when you first saw L'Origine du Monde, and has that changed now? Now that you know it so well, do you have a different relationship with it? I guess you might do.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Like, I think I was in shocked wonder, like most people are when they first see it. You don't expect to see that in a museum. It's like so in your face, literally.
Yeah.
And then pretty quickly it became like an infatuation almost. And I was going to say put a spell on me, but bewitched is the same thing. As an artist, there's a lot to love about it. Not the least of which is the way that Courbet painted flesh. I mean, he was just a master. It's luminescent when you see it in the flesh. It's just beautiful. Yeah. So I loved it from that point of view, but I kept going back to it because I just thought, wow, that is bold. That is audacious. That is just, I've never seen anything like it. And I think that I, in general, respect artists that go out on a limb and that break the norms. And so to me, it was just like, whoa. So after I became the official copiste, and I then spent years researching it. So now I know it like in and out, back to front, upside down. Mm-hmm. And I just have a greater admiration for it and a much more nuanced perception of it when I found out like what it had been through and also more about Courbet himself. And so now I love it even more, and I feel very protective of it. Yeah.
I imagine that. And because it is undoubtedly an erotic piece, and I remember seeing it, and I sort of had an interesting reaction where I really wanted to look at it and I really wanted to revel in its fantastic eroticism. But even in my own mind, I was thinking, oh, I don't want to be looking like I'm enjoying this too much. I'm so embarrassed. So even in my own head, I was thinking, oh, and look at those lovely brushstrokes. Look at that lovely lighting to kind of sort of make it okay, and to sort of not diminish the eroticism, but to sort of shroud it in something a little bit more studious. Is it still an erotic work for you, or is that now lost?
I wouldn't say that. Like I said, it was a bit shocking, but as a woman, I didn't find it erotic, but it was certainly very carnal. And it was really, it was really amusing watching exactly the reaction you had when people saw it, especially men. They would want to stand there and look at it. I mean, it is an incredible painting. And so they would put on their glasses and go and read the inscription and go back to it as if someone was watching them saying, oh, he's really interested in the date of this painting and not really about the painting. People were embarrassed to really stare at it. And you can imagine when I sort of set up my easel the first day in front of it, and everyone was like looking at me going, what is she doing? I wanted to fall through the floor. I was so embarrassed. But I quickly got over that. But in my book, I do give an anecdote told by a security guard that just after it was on permanent display at the museum, this gentleman would turn up every morning dressed in a raincoat and stand in front of the painting for hours on end. And in the end,
not doing anything.
Not doing anything, but apparently. But the museum eventually asked him to please remove himself and not to come back. So there's all these different stories swirling around it.
Yeah, I can imagine, and actually, it must have been rather delicious for you to sit there and to be able to watch or to look at her with impunity, and then also have a cheeky look at all of the reactions.
Yes, around. And I didn't realize. I think I was a bit naive. I didn't realize that doing that sort of painting would be a form of performance art. You know, people would really, and it was really an interesting thing because, you know, this painting has been reviled as sort of the symbol of the male gaze. Okay, so here I was gazing at it, and people were gazing at me, and it was a very strange sensation. I sort of suddenly felt like I was in the eye of everybody, and I didn't think that that would happen. I didn't think it through. Yeah. So I've forgotten what you asked.
And no, I've got another question that I'm really interested to know the answer to. In your book, you talk about how at one moment you felt that you wanted to paint naked for the day, and so you went. Sorry for bringing it up, but I just have to ask. So you went to the authorities in the Musée d'Orsay and you said, hey, do you mind if I paint naked? And they said, yes, we do mind. Are you sad that you weren't able to do that? Or are you kind of like...
Not at all, but I do want to put all that in context and explain myself.
Yeah.
Because what happened is, as I got into several weeks of painting that painting, you cannot imagine the feeling of identification. Like the paint, L'Origine became me and I became L'Origine. We were one and the same. It was this sort of like spiritual, you know, sisterhood that I was feeling. It's very hard to explain. And I wanted to sort of like commune with it even deeper and even more. And it occurred to me like, well, what if I just like, myself, what if I myself was totally naked? I was painting there for one afternoon. How would that feel? And it's crazy. But anyway, so I don't know what got over me. And I went, I actually asked for permission. And I tell you, the guy almost fell off his seat. And he was like stuttering and he was going, "Bah non, madame, mais qu'est-ce que c'est que ça?" You know, and I just took it very much in stride. And I said, well, okay, you know, I just thought I'd ask. And, but as you have mentioned in some of your stories and your wonderful newscast about it, actually in 2014, several years after I painted it, a young woman, a performance artist from Luxembourg, Deborah de Robertis, she came into the museum. I also speak about this in my book, and in a gold sequin dress, walked in front of the painting and just sat down on the floor towards the audience, towards the viewers, no underwear on, and spread her legs and just kept reiterating one line. Je suis femme, je suis l'origine, you know, like, again, identifying I am woman. And I think I'm probably the only person in the world who really can understand why she did that.
Yes, because it was very much seen as a sort of an act of exhibitionism. You know, people in general didn't really identify with the message that she was trying to.
Oh, it was shocking. I mean, the people who were in the gallery at the time, they had a good old time. They were photographing her and everything. The guy rushed in, and the police were called, and all this sort of thing. But she really did want to make a point. You know, it's not for male gaze anymore. We are empowered. This is us. This is woman. We're proud to be women. So it was all that wrapped into one.
Yeah. So turning more to the novel, you were starting from a place where you wrote the novel that there was a lot of gaps, right? So, you know, not so much was known about this work. You know, there were sort of rumors, things were sketchy. The various owners weren't entirely sure who owned the work. Was there was there a eureka moment for you, either in terms, or it's kind of two questions, in terms of the sort of the definite information, the kind of the chronological nature of the work, what had happened to it actually properly, or did you have a eureka moment in terms of understanding it? So kind of two
Right.
questions, rather awkwardly put. Sorry.
No, I know where you're going with this. I think I'll take that in two parts, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
So if I forget the eureka moment part, I'd like to first say that, anyone who writes a historical fiction novel relies on the immaculate research done by, scores, and in this case, hundreds of people before. So it wasn't like I actually uncovered anything new, but what I did do is I read so many books, upwards of 30 or 40 books in French and English on this subject. And there were gaps. And all of these books, all of them, without an exception, were either art historical biographies or they were like treatises for academia. So I thought this story is just too good. I have to get it out there, especially for English-speaking audiences. And so what happens with those gaps? So I read so much. I didn't make up the gaps. Every book I read, I sort of like would cherry pick these fabulous little information pieces. Like, oh, he said that so-and-so met so-and-so. I hadn't read that anywhere else. So I had this big board in my studio, and I would say, okay, here's the gap. Here's what happened before the gap. Here's what happened after the gap. And so I would try to figure out how these people would eventually intersect with these people. So it was all based on research on how I got the story and how it made sense to fill the gaps in. It was a puzzle. So I had two Bibles, so to speak, when I was looking, when I was researching. So the first one was from Thierry Savatier. It's called L'Origine du Monde. And he is the French art historian who is the expert in France for L'Origine du Monde. And he himself spent years following the trail of the painting. So I got, the chronological stuff really down with him. And the other one of my Bibles, I can hardly pick it up, is this compendium of Gustave Courbet's translated letters. He was an amazingly expressive person, and I fell in love with him. I started off with that, and I just became totally obsessed. He was just an amazing person. He was obnoxious, egotistical, womanizer, chauvinist, principled, lovable, boisterous. He just was everything. So just to get the viewers in a mood, I thought I'd read 3 tiny little excerpts from his letter.
Oh,
that'd be okay?
Fantastic.
So you get an idea, like I'm not making it up in the book, So here he was writing to his family when they suggested a what do you call it? Matchmaking. They wanted him to get married.
Okay.
He was a young man, but he never got married, actually. So he says, let's talk about something less important. I don't know what kind of nasty trick you're playing on me with regard to some ridiculous marriage. If it is a joke, it's a good one. I am as inclined to get married as I am to hang myself.
Oh, okay. I think he made his point, yeah.
He made his point, and he never diverted from it, and that was him to a T. Then I've got another little thing here where he did tend to sort of feel sorry for himself, but he did struggle with art, and I think nothing is different than in the 19th century for artists. So he says here, this was 1846. Dear family, I wish you, albeit a little late, a happy new year. I remind you that no one wished me the same, though I think that I'm the one who needs it most, for there is nothing more difficult in the world than to create art, especially when no one understands it. So
okay. That's really, very telling, isn't it? Yeah.
That's very telling. And then just to show you he wasn't very sensitive. Here he is in a condolence letter, a friend of his whose father died. Okay.
Oh.
I don't know whether I've told you my philosophy towards the dead. First of all, I don't mourn the dead, convinced as I am that one mourns not for them but for oneself, out of egoism. I would perhaps grieve for them if the life of one man was directly useful to the life of another, but I don't believe that this is the case. That was his condolence letter.
Wow,
so like,
okay.
Yeah.
So,
And I think there's something to that, actually.
yes.
But it wasn't very sensitively,
No, I think, yeah, he might have put it better, right? Yeah.
And one line.
Go on, yes.
This is one of the quotes that he's famous. This is one of the quotes. So he was writing to the government director of the Fine Arts Administration, who dared to sort of question him and who dared to criticize his painting. Tell him that I was the sole judge of my painting, that I was not only a painter but also a human being. And he was proud of the fact that he called himself the proudest man in France.
And I guess having sort of not caught all of the last quote, unfortunately, but I think, yes, what you're saying is he was incredibly self-assured to the point of absolute arrogance. And do you think that is why he was able to paint this work that was so shocking, so shocking that it had to be hidden? Do you think that had something to do with it, or do you think he had other motivations? Or,
well, I'd say I was thinking about that earlier this morning, and there's two things I can say that sort of describe entire art practice and the way he thought. Nature was his God, and realism was his religion. He literally lived by those principles. So I myself am understanding his mindset and writing the chapter when he painted that painting. Like, why then? What was in his mind? Yeah. And I found out through research that just before he painted Jean du Monde, he painted a series of paintings of a dark grotto that was the source of the Lou River near his house in Ornans. And he was very interested in origins and sources. And I think that was a natural progression. That woman is the origin of the world. The woman has the potential to deliver the origin of the world. And that's where the origin of the world begins. So it really coincided with this series of paintings of this dark cave, almost in the same sort of composition.
Yeah, I see. And so he called the painting L'Origine du Monde.
Well, actually, no one, not even Thierry Savatier, has nailed that one down. There's a lot of different theories swirling around, and no one actually knows. Some people say it was Courbet. Some people say it was somebody who actually wrote a critical essay after having seen it. So that has not been nailed down. And to me, even if Courbet didn't call it the origin of the world, I know that he was concerned and interested in sources and origins. And he really believed, like I said, in nature. He was just, God was nature.
Yeah, so possibly. And I've just noticed, as you're moving your head, I've just seen, have you got your copy on the easel? Wow! Wow. And so do you display it in your home? You don't hide it? Please tell me that you don't hide it in a false frame behind some bland landscape.
I don't hide it, but I don't display it. And it's a funny thing, I just don't. I don't really need to hear I almost don't want to make it shocking. I don't see it as shocking. I love the painting. I admire it. I feel protective of it, like I said. And to put it up on the wall, whoever would see it would sort of think I was making some sort of, shocking statement. And that is really not what I want to do.
Okay. Yeah, and I understand that. So on that note, now that it's in the Musée d'Orsay, so for decades it was in private collections, various private collections, and now it is on display to the public in Musée d'Orsay. Do you think that is going to really change the dynamic that people will have with a painting inevitably? So, obviously if you see something and you are in a room with it by yourself, you're able to maybe be more yourself. Do you think it has diminished people's ability to react to it? Clearly not yours.
Yeah, no, people the first time, they still have very powerful emotions, just like what I witnessed when I was painting it. And actually, even just last week, an art historian who teaches courses in Seattle called the painting loathsome. Loathsome. And I thought, why loathsome? And other people say it's beautiful. There was a lot of, especially French women when I was there, who loved it, absolutely loved it. But I would say that there's two camps. There's a camp that think that the painting is an exploitation, and there's the camp that thinks it's an empowerment. And of course, I'm in the latter group. But look, we all look at the world through our own lens, our own belief systems, our aesthetics, our experiences. So especially you, Lynn, you know that when you impart information on a work of art, people see it differently. People understand it differently. People will perhaps judge it in a different way because they know something more about it. They don't judge it just on face value. And this is a painting that is very much being judged on face value, obviously. It's very shocking. So I think that's always going to be the case. People, come at it from their very different perspectives. And it's always going to be the case. And hopefully my book will humanize the painting. That's really what I wanted to do.
I hope so. I hope so. I have one final question for you, which is it's a bit left field, but I'm going to say it. So I observed, obviously I've looked at this work quite a lot over the past few weeks, and I noticed that actually, so Constance Cagneau, who is the model, she does have undeniably a beautiful, luxurious bush going on down there, doesn't she? I mean, it is quite something. But I was thinking, okay, well, she's a pretty lucky lady because that bikini line is pretty clear. She doesn't appear to have hairy legs. I mean, you said that Courbet's religion was reality, right? Realism. So, was she just lucky, do you think? Or has he idealized her, tidied her up? Impossible question perhaps for you to answer, but what's your feeling?
Well, I would say that I don't think he would have tidied her up too much, because he actually said in his letters, I love everything for what it is. And so she, I think, was just pretty lucky to have this glorious bush that didn't, start creeping down her legs and in her thigh. But the fact that she had this unmanicured, pubic bush was something that a lot of the younger women who came into the museum were really grossed out about. And that sort of shocked me because, what would they do without a monthly waxing? I mean, this is nature. And actually in another interview with the, on the book with the Australian Financial Times review, she asked me about that also. And we were discussing how popular now labial surgery is, and that a lot of young women want to sort of have this idealized, genitals according to how it looks mostly from images in pornography, which is kind of sad, actually. But obviously, L'Origine's model, Constance Cagneau, didn't.
And absolutely. So actually,
one more little anecdote. One day,
sorry.
Yeah. So one day, when I was painting, a father came in with his young son, who must have been maybe 6 or 7, and he was saying, "Oh, regarde, blah blah blah." He was wanted his son to see it, and the little boy says, "What's all that black stuff?" It was really so cute. So I
that kind of wow. Yeah, wow. I mean, so then in a way, far from being something that isn't empowering women, that is the subject of the male gaze and so on, she has in yet another way actually empowered women, the origin of the world. And then a natural woman, as she,
That's a good point. Yes.
albeit a lucky one. With a great bikini line. But, yeah. We've got a question, so I'm going to turn comments back on. If anybody else has got any questions. We also, don't forget, Lilian, we also have, we have to announce the winner of the giveaway, so stay with us. I'm going to turn comments back on and ask you, and let's just have a look at the question that we've got, and then... Oh, can you give the titles of the book that were mentioned about the painting? So I think
Yes.
the titles of
the
big old tomes that you were reading, I think.
Yes. So first of all, let me just mention that in the book, I have a suggested selected reading list because there is so much to learn about it. So if you get the book, it's all my favorite books, about 20 of them, are listed in the back of the book. So the big heavy tome is Letters of Letters of Gustave.
Don't let to make you lift it up again. Sorry.
But I think it's backwards, isn't it?
Yes.
Or do you see it?
Yes. So sorry.
And it's by Petra Doshate-Chou. It's quite a mouthful, but you'll be able to find it by Letters Courbet. And the other one was quite easy, L'Origine du Monde by Thierry Savatier, S-A-V-A-T-I-E-R, Savatier. And like I said, it's all in the back of my book as well.
Fantastic. Maybe what you could do is pop it on stories afterwards. The names of the books on stories.
Great idea. Thank you. I will. Yeah.
I've got there's a couple of other questions. How big is the painting? Well, so presumably your copy is exactly the same size.
No, in fact, when you copy at a museum, you have to paint it either 15% smaller or 15% larger, so that you can't.
Do you?
Yeah, you can't pawn it off as the original.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So the painting is actually small for the punch that it packs. I forget now. I think it's something like, I'm looking at mine. I think it's something like 24 inches by 16, something like that. So it's or 22 inches by 16. It's quite small, but it makes for it.
More intimate.
Exactly.
And there's one more question. Are you planning other books? Are there other art or artists that you'd write on?
I am planning other things, but this one took me 10 years. So, so I am thinking about a children's book, actually, based on a character I met in France last year when I was on another residency there. So who knows?
Great. Okay, so everyone watch this space. 2030. Beyond the Palette and Lilianne Milgrom. I hope we won't wait 10 years though. I really hope that we won't wait 10 years. Lilianne, I'm going to turn off comments because they're covering your lovely face. Thank you so much. It's delightful speaking to you, and you're a wealth of knowledge and so fascinating. I mean, the novel is fascinating. The journey of the book is fascinating, but the way that you tell it is really enchanting. So I hope that hundreds and hundreds and thousands and millions of people buy it. I'm going to put it as a link on my website, so people can come to the Beyond the Palette website and click on a link and buy a copy. And I'm sure that Lilianne will also perhaps put on Instagram after this. Also,
thank you to everyone.
Buy the book as well.
Thank you, Lynn. Like, I have to say that I'm frozen. I'll just say,
yeah, a little bit.
So much. Thank you so much. I mean, the interest has been really great, and I think it is because it is a universally controversial subject. And
yes.
I feel very personally about it, but now it's out in the world, and I cherish the time I spent with it. And yeah, you can buy the book on Amazon, or you can order it from your local bookstore. But Lynn, thank you so much for this opportunity. And everyone should tune in to Lynn, because art history has never been more fun.
Thank you so much. The pleasure has been mine. Oh, now I'm kicking my microphone stand, my stand. It's been wonderful, and I know that we'll keep in touch, and I wish you absolutely all the best with it. And yeah, keep us informed.
Thanks,
and thank you very much.
Bye bye, everybody.
Have a lovely afternoon and a great weekend, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye.